I moved in on a gray Monday morning, the sky like dull lead, like the whole city had agreed to go easy on someone trying to start over. The apartment I rented sat on the third floor of an old red brick building tucked into a quiet suburb in New Jersey. Not too far from the city center if needed, but distant enough that the only nighttime sounds were the sighs of a weary radiator. It was exactly what I wanted. Not too close, not too far. No one watching. No one asking. My name is Owen. 34. Freelance graphic designer. The kind of job that turns you quieter each year, both in voice and eye contact. I work from home, set my own hours, and never really need to leave unless absolutely necessary. My days begin with bitter iced coffee from a dented Nespresso, followed by hours of screen time, and end with reruns of old sitcoms on TV. I'm the kind of person who puts the remote in the exact same spot, drinks coffee from the same cup, and sleeps with the bedroom door slightly cracked. Not out of fear, just preference. My life could be called controlled, and after years of chaos living in Manhattan with an unstable ex, controlled was something I would sacrifice anything to reclaim. There was nothing special about this apartment, and that was exactly why I chose it. One bedroom, one living room open to a small kitchen, a bathroom with a flickering light. The wooden floors creaked. The walls were chipped. The heater needed a tap to wake up. The TV was mounted on the opposite wall from the couch, and the Wi-Fi router sat right below it. Strong internet was non-negotiable. The window faced a parking lot. No one could see in, and I had no need to see out. I unpacked everything in one day. No decor, no plants. Just what I needed: computer, desk, a few clothes, the TV. That first night, I sprawled out on the couch, hit play on an old Seinfeld episode, and laughed at lines I'd memorized years ago. Everything felt peaceful. Tuesday was the same. Wednesday even faster. I finished 3 client projects, ordered food online, watched more episodes I didn't need to pay attention to, and didn't speak to another human being. Perfect. The only thing that startled me was the elevator sound, a strange metallic moan every time someone called it. A mix of groaning and dragging steel. I could tell which neighbor came and went just by that sound. The unit to the left had heavy, slow footsteps, maybe elderly. The one on the right was so silent I assumed it was empty. No one knocked. No one bothered me. The place started to feel like a soundproof room designed to soothe frayed nerves. No sharp colors. No surprises. No one but me knew I was here. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Until Wednesday night, when the TV turned on by itself, playing something I had never chosen. We lived quietly, without noise, without needing much. My mother was a soft-spoken woman who loved growing wild chrysanthemums and cooking traditional dishes from recipes she had learned from my grandmother. She didn't speak much, but the way she looked at me, the subtle nod she gave whenever I came home on time, made me feel like my life had its own quiet rhythm, simple and complete. I figured it was just a glitch. It was around 9 p.m. on my 4th night in the new apartment. I was watching an old episode of The Office, Michael impersonating Dwight, a scene that still made me laugh like it was the first time. My iced coffee was to my left, the remote perfectly centered on the coffee table, everything where it should be. I got up to use the bathroom. Didn't turn off the TV. Of course, I'd be right back. But when I returned just a few minutes later, the screen had changed. No more The Office. Instead, it was some grainy black and white footage. No music, no dialogue. The camera was shaky low to the ground, showing a long corridor with flickering fluorescent lights above. Nothing moved, but something felt off, as if the person filming was waiting for something to appear. I frowned and pressed back on the remote. Nothing happened. I tried changing the channel. No response. Pressed menu. The screen stayed frozen on that hallway, that cold lighting, that slow, pulsing shake like it was breathing. I turned the TV off. It turned off, sure. The screen went black. No standby light. I sat back down, picked up my coffee, and tried to remember. Did I accidentally switch channels? But I hadn't touched the remote. I turned the TV back on, checked my watch history. Nothing except Netflix and Hulu. No channel or app that could have shown that footage. I half joked to myself, maybe the neighbor's signal bled through. Then I played The Office again, fast-forwarded to where I left off. But I couldn't laugh like before. I didn't think much of it that night. It was weird, sure, but I've dealt with buggy tech before. Comes with a design job. I checked the HDMI cables, rebooted the TV, logged the time, exactly 8:53 p.m. I told myself, if it happens again, I'll call Sony. And then it did. The next night. This time, I left the living room just to grab food from the door. 3 minutes, tops. When I came back, the TV was on again. Different scene this time, no hallway. A forest, shot from a distance, slowly zooming in on a woman in a white dress standing in a clearing. She smiled at the camera, but in the shadows behind her, there was something. Standing or crawling or slithering, I couldn't tell. I froze. There was no sound, but I imagined breathing. Loud and slow. I reached for the remote. None of the buttons worked. Just like the night before. I turned the TV off using the button on the back. Unplugged it. This time, I made a mental note of everything. Plugged it back in. Nothing strange. But the room didn't feel right anymore. There was a kind of warped silence. Like the room had once been breathing, and now it was holding its breath. I Googled every possible malfunction for a Sony Bravia. Auto-on issues, signal corruption, HDMI interference. One forum mentioned broadcast hijacking. But those cases usually involved hackers, not this kind of spontaneous weirdness. I scoured Reddit for similar posts. Some vague stories, but no one had video proof. I thought about setting up a camera to record the TV when I left the room, but I felt like maybe I was overreacting. After all, this could still be something mundane. A defective set, a loose socket, electromagnetic crossover. I turned on all the lights, put on some lo-fi Spotify music, told myself, it's nothing, just a tech hiccup. I poured a bit of whiskey, tried to let it go, but one question kept circling in my head all night. Why does it only turn on when I leave the room? I started taking notes. Not just casually, I logged every frame, every timestamp. I wrote down the details of each bizarre segment that played on the TV when I left the room. Not a single scene ever repeated. None of them looked familiar. Saturday night, I got up just to grab more ice from the kitchen. The TV turned on, soundless. The footage showed a waiting room. plastic chairs arranged in rows. One chair in the middle gently swayed, as if someone had just left it. Behind the glass wall, lights flickered, but no one was there. I pulled out my phone and recorded it, heart pounding like it would leap out of my chest. The next morning, I played the video. Just a black screen. No sound. No image. The length matched exactly the time I was recording. I tried again. Set up my GoPro facing the TV. Left the room for exactly 10 minutes. When I returned, the TV showed underwater footage, looking up from beneath a lake. Light shimmered faintly. Shadowy figures moved above the surface, as if people were walking just beyond view. Hands shaking, I hit stop. Reviewed the recording. Black screen again. 10 full minutes of silence and void. I switched cameras. Used an old phone. Added an external mic. No change. Always just a blank, empty video, as if nothing had happened. But I had seen something. I knew what I saw. So I started a more detailed log. Day 6, hospital hallway. Flickering lights. Shadowy figures crossing silently. Day 7, forest with still trees. No wind, but rhythmic breathing behind the camera. Day 8, empty room. Peeling ceiling. The camera trembled like it was held by unsteady hands. Each segment lasted just 20 to 30 seconds. Never any dialogue. Never any clear faces. But the feeling was undeniable. Something was looking back at me. I tried a new test. Instead of filming the TV, I recorded myself. I needed to know, what was I doing when the TV turned on? That night, I sat on the couch, casually playing YouTube. I got up to go to the bathroom, placing the camera in the kitchen, angled toward the sofa. When I returned, the TV was on. This time, a warehouse hallway, dim amber light, the camera panned slowly, then stopped. And there was a soft chuckle. The first time any sound had come through. I froze. Didn't turn to look. Shut off the TV with the remote. Then I reviewed the footage of myself. I never stood up. Never left the room. The entire video, I sat motionless, eyes wide, unblinking, for 7 full minutes. Only when I returned from the bathroom did my body stir, like it had been handed back control. I watched it again, frame by frame. No mistake. I never left the couch, at least not in the footage. So who went into the bathroom? Or worse, who's watching this video now? My grip on logic began to wear thin. I felt suspended between two timelines, one I lived in and one the TV broadcasted. Each program seemed like a fragment from a world with no name, no time, but always some presence behind the lens. A filmer or a watcher. And I started to wonder if I even existed in the right place anymore. Was I the viewer, the film, or the one trapped inside the screen, trying to get back out? I decided to trick it. There was no other option. Every time the TV turned itself on, it only happened when I left the living room. But now I wanted to see, if I just pretended to leave, would it still react the same way? That night, I reset my clocks and positioned my phone to secretly record from the kitchen corner. I walked out of the living room as usual, but just past the threshold, I hid behind the wall, peeking through the narrow space back into the room. The TV was dark. I held my breath, silently counted in my head. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Pop. The screen lit up. No sound. But there was no doubt now. I could still witness it, even though I hadn't fully left. This time, the footage made my skin crawl. A hallway, but not a strange one. The hallway outside my apartment. I recognized every crack in the tiles, every patch of peeling paint on the door of Unit 305, the one next to mine. The camera slowly panned from one end of the hall to my front door, then stopped. I saw no person holding the camera, no movement, just the yellow lighting and a growing certainty. Someone was standing right outside my door. I stepped back into the living room, staring at the screen. But the moment I fully entered, the TV shut off. No flicker, no glitch, just off. I moved closer, checked the power cable, looked into the glassy screen. No reflection. For the first time, I felt something different from fear. Not panic, not confusion, but a calculated sense of being studied. Like something or someone was using the TV as a tool to test me. I wrote down the details of the broadcast. My apartment hallway, 8:47 p.m. No visible movement, but the camera shook slightly. Angle was low, as if held at waist level or lower. I stood in the hallway, exactly where the footage had been taken. Compared angles. Everything matched perfectly. I took pictures, made notes. But when I reviewed the photos on my phone, each one of the hallway was blurry, overexposed, as if a thin layer of fog had crept in front of the lens. I went to bed with the bedroom door wide open, not for airflow, but because I wanted to know if someone walked in. But all night, I heard no footsteps. Just once, close to 2 a.m., the sound of a doorknob faintly clicking came from the front. I didn't go look, didn't open my eyes. Just laid there, imagining the glow of the TV quietly casting light across the apartment, even though no one had turned it on. I decided to install a fixed camera. No more phone recording from corners. This time, I set up a full Logitech webcam on my bookshelf, facing the living room. It ran 24/7, recording directly to a hard drive. I needed evidence. Not just to convince myself I wasn't going insane, but to have something, anything, outside myself that could confirm this was actually happening. That night, I tried a simple test. Sat on the sofa like always, played a podcast in the background, then stood up and walked into the kitchen for about 3 minutes. Just long enough to give the TV time to act, if it wanted to. When I returned, right on cue, the screen had lit up. No hallway this time. No forest. This time, it was inside my apartment. From the ceiling, looking down at the exact spot on the couch where I had just been sitting. A top-down angle I couldn't possibly capture unless I had installed a camera on the ceiling, which I hadn't. I stepped back. Didn't turn off the TV. Didn't speak. Just stared. A few seconds later, the screen cut to black. I pulled the hard drive, loaded the file onto my computer. Nothing. No footage of me standing up. No return. No TV turning on. Only one uninterrupted clip. Me sitting still. Motionless. Not blinking. For over 2 hours. I fast-forwarded, then slowed it down, frame by frame. No change. My body looked like a stone sculpture slotted into the furniture. My face, completely vacant. I checked the metadata, no missing files. Webcam was working fine. It recorded everything, just not the things I saw. I ran the test again the next night. Added a second camera, this one facing in from the hallway. I kept the kitchen light on to sync the timestamps. I left the room at exactly 9:07 p.m. The TV lit up at 9:08. This time, it played a slow-motion shot of an empty intersection at night, with a single man in a white hoodie standing under the streetlight. His back was to the camera, but the footage kept creeping closer, zooming toward the nape of his neck. I stepped back into the hallway. Silent. The next morning, I checked both cameras. Again, both showed me never getting up, never leaving the couch. Just sitting there, still, eyes open, hands resting on my knees, same as the night before. I started becoming afraid of my own body. I set alarms in the middle of the night, forcing myself to wake up and catch the TV off guard. Each time it was off, until I left the room. It never activated under my direct gaze. Only when I wasn't watching. Only when there was a gap in awareness. I logged a new phenomenon. Every morning I woke up sore, like I'd been lifting weights or doing hard labor. But the cameras always showed me never leaving bed. Each day, my reflection in the mirror looked more and more faded. Headaches flared whenever I tried recalling simple details. What did I eat for dinner yesterday? When was the last thing I said out loud? I wasn't sure anymore. All I knew was the TV kept playing, and I was no longer sure who was really holding the remote. I called Jack. Jack was an electronics engineer, an old friend from college, and the only person I still kept in touch with from those years. If anyone could help me catch what was really going on, it was him. I didn't tell him everything up front. Just said my TV seemed to have a power glitch, or maybe was being remotely accessed somehow. Jack showed up that Sunday afternoon, lugging a signal detector and a toolkit. It took him about 40 minutes to open the back panel, check the HDMI ports, power cable, electrical outlets, even the Wi-Fi transmitter in the apartment. I stood by, quietly watching. Nothing, Jack said, wiping his forehead. The TV's functioning perfectly. No interference, no strange current spikes, no remote access signals. It's almost too clean. I swallowed, unsure whether I should feel relieved or terrified. But here's the weird part, Jack continued, lowering his voice. When I scanned with a frequency detector, I picked up a signal emitting from the TV, but only one way. What do you mean? I mean it's not receiving anything, it's sending. Any regular device, TV, remote, even your microwave, will bounce signals back and forth. This thing, it's just broadcasting. No reply channel. My heartbeat quickened. So you're saying my TV isn't being controlled from the outside, it's sending something out? Jack nodded. Exactly. And have you been feeling anything strange lately? Like lost time? Or weird, floaty sensations when waking up? I froze. I told him everything. Every time I left the room, every creepy segment on screen, every time I didn't show up on camera footage, the morning fatigue with no explanation. Jack was silent for a long time. Then he sighed. You're not the first person I've heard this kind of thing from, he said. There's this subreddit, a couple fringe Discord groups. They talk about non-conscious transmission vectors. The theory is normal household objects, lamps, TVs, even fridges, are used to interfere with perception and memory. A chill ran down my spine. Jack placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his voice serious. You need to start logging everything, hour by hour, every action. Check yourself every morning. Take blood pressure, look at your face, handwrite notes. Don't type them. If anything changes, you need to notice it before it's too late. I nodded, like a patient being warned they might have been replaced. That night, after Jack left, I sat alone in the living room. I didn't turn the TV on. I didn't turn the lights on. Just stared at the unplugged screen. And in that absolute silence, I found myself wondering, had I ever turned the TV on at all? Or had I been just another piece of footage all along? Something being broadcast from right here? I began to fear sleeping, not because of nightmares, but because of what the TV would show the next morning. At first, it was vague, shadowy figures gliding past the kitchen, flickering lights in the hallway when all the bulbs were off. But then it escalated. I remember that night clearly. I slept on my side, blanket pulled up to my neck, head turned toward the window. The next morning, walking past the living room, the TV turned on. No sound, no menu, just an image of me, lying in bed, in that exact position. The angle was from the ceiling, looking down. Not from any camera I'd ever set up. I checked again. There was nothing on the ceiling. In the footage, I shifted slightly, like I was dreaming. But I wasn't alone. Next to me, under the blanket, was a shape. Indistinct. Bulky, long, uneven. Like something large was in bed with me, but it wasn't human. I backed away, hands shaking. The TV kept playing that image. No fast forward. No loop. Just still. I screamed, grabbed the remote, and shut it off. It went black instantly, but the feeling of being seen didn't leave. I wasn't watching the TV anymore. The TV was watching me. I reviewed the footage from the bedroom camera. Nothing. No movement from me. No second figure. Just another black screen, like always. I started to feel like the space around me wasn't mine anymore. Even in dreams, in unconsciousness, I was never alone. Another segment. The TV showed me curled in a corner of the kitchen. I had no memory of doing that. My eyes in the video were wide blank, like nothing was behind them. I was holding something. When I squinted, I realized it was the remote. But it looked warped, like someone had crushed it. I had no memory of it. No memory of standing, or sitting, or anything. One night, I woke up, not from a nightmare, but because of a faint light bleeding into the room from the living room. I stepped out. The TV wasn't playing a scene. It was playing me. Me exactly as I was, stepping out of the bedroom, looking at the TV. The image on screen mirrored every blink, every step, every twitch with perfect precision. I turned away. The figure on the screen kept looking at me. I sat down. The figure on the screen stayed standing, unmoved. I held my breath. The figure on the screen kept breathing. I no longer knew if I was the real one or the reflection. I didn't know what was controlling what. I only knew one thing. The TV didn't need me to leave the room anymore. It had stepped inside me. And now it was broadcasting, from within. I began pushing its limits. I wasn't just watching anymore, I tried to interact with it. Because the programs on the TV were no longer random. They were responding to my behavior. One time, I pretended to leave the room like always. But instead of heading to the kitchen or bathroom, I quickly doubled back and hid behind the sofa, watching the screen from a low angle. The TV turned on. A nighttime scene, grainy, seemingly shot with infrared. Hard to tell at first, but after a few seconds I realized. It was my apartment. I recognized the window frame, the wooden chair near the wall, the pile of books I hadn't yet shelved. The TV's camera panned, sweeping past the kitchen, then stopped on. My back. I froze. On screen, a figure was standing behind me. Faceless. Just a vague outline, but too close. I spun around in real life. No one. Looked back at the TV, black screen. I tried again. Each time I peeked from a new angle, the TV seemed to strike back with footage of that exact moment, from angles no camera could physically capture. Another time, I stood perfectly still in the middle of the room, maintaining the same pose for 10 minutes. The TV lit up. Image, me sitting on the sofa, head down, hands on knees, face pale. But I was clearly standing at that moment. Yet the screen showed a different version of me, completely motionless. I moved closer. The screen flickered slightly. The seated version of me raised its head, stared directly at me. I backed away and turned on every light in the apartment. I felt like I was being watched every second, not by any specific device or person, but by a will, using the TV as a window to observe, analyze, reflect. The TV wasn't broadcasting anymore. It had become a kind of mirror, but not of my image, of my mind. I tried one last thing. I set a camera to record myself watching the TV, not while leaving the room, while looking directly at it. The segment that aired was of a bathroom, the tub overflowing, faucet still running. No one was there. But from my handheld camera, I saw myself, crying. No sobs, no sound, but tears running down. I didn't remember crying. I didn't feel anything at that moment. But the footage didn't lie. I began to suspect that every action I made, every movement, glance, fear, was being recorded, duplicated, and played out by a version of me I couldn't control. A second self. A person living in parallel, only visible when I wasn't looking. I smashed the TV at 3:12 a.m. Not because of a particularly terrifying scene, not out of fear, but because of desperation. I couldn't take it anymore. The hammer I used was the same one I'd used to mount wall shelves, still dusted with dried paint. I swung it straight into the screen, no hesitation. Glass shattered. The LCD bled like bruised flesh. I didn't scream. I didn't gasp. I just stood there, watching it slump. Finally, a lifeless object, broken and silent. I slept well that night. The next morning, I woke up late. No light, no sound, no dreams. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself. I walked out of my room, headed to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and nearly dropped my water bottle when I turned around. The TV was still there, intact, not a single crack, no scratches. The screen was glowing. replaying footage of me on the couch from the night before. I stepped closer, breathless. The angle was from the back of the room, an angle where no camera had ever been set. I sat there, motionless. But I wasn't alone. In the dark corner behind the chair, a figure was standing. Faceless, unclothed, just a shadow, but unmistakably human. Standing right behind me. I spun around. The room was empty. No one. I looked back at the screen. The scene continued, unlooked, unedited. The TV was trying to remind me it knew more than I did. I tried pulling the power cord. Nothing happened. The TV wasn't plugged in. I backed away. The TV no longer needed me to leave the room. It had become active. I shut down every device in the house, unplugged the router, flipped the main breaker. The TV stayed on. No sound, just images, slow, deliberate, as if it were replaying my own memories. Another segment appeared, me, standing in my bedroom, gazing out the window. But I'd never done that. Not that I remembered. No camera had captured it. Yet the TV played it, as if I had lived that moment in another layer of reality, and the TV was calling it back. I could no longer trust my own memories. No longer sure what was action and what was reenactment. The TV was no longer just a device. It was a willful I. And even if I smashed it, burned it, threw it out the window, I had a feeling it would always come back. I began to dream. Not the usual chaotic nonsense, but structured dreams with sequences, progression, like a TV program. Every time I drifted into sleep, I saw a soft blue glow, dim like it came from the bottom of the ocean. There were no clear images, just floating lights and whispers from every direction. At first, they were vague sounds, like wind slipping through a crack. But as the nights went on, the whispers grew clearer. Keep watching. You haven't seen the best part yet. I jolted awake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. No sound. No picture. The TV was off or waiting. I checked the clock, 4:14 a.m. Never a round number. Always odd. Always illogical. I began losing my ability to measure time. One morning, I thought I'd been awake for 10 minutes. Turns out it had been 2 hours. Another time, I checked the clock 3 times within the same minute. Each time, it showed a different time. I tried keeping a handwritten time journal, but the entries written at night weren't in my handwriting. The next few nights, the light in the dreams sharpened. No longer just blue dots, but a screen, my TV, but in a different space. I was sitting in front of it, unable to move. No emotion, no thought, just staring. The voice returned. The more you watch, the more I understand you. I slowly realized the dreams weren't recaps. They were previews. I dreamed of opening the fridge, and the next morning, I found the exact food I'd seen. I dreamed of my phone falling into the sink, and 3 days later, it happened. The TV started broadcasting events that hadn't happened yet. I walked into the bathroom and saw it showing me standing at the mirror. A few seconds before I actually did. No longer delayed, but ahead. I stopped sleeping. Stopped eating on schedule. Stopped knowing what now was. I had only 2 states of being left. Watching and being watched. I began spending the entire day in front of the TV, not for entertainment, not even to observe, but because I was afraid to look away. Every time I blinked for too long or turned my head just slightly, when I looked back, something was off. The stool in the corner was shifted slightly left. The painting on the wall hung 5 centimeters higher. The cactus tilted the opposite direction. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But then I taped markers on the floor, circled every object with chalk. The next morning, nearly half the objects were outside their original boundaries. The TV wasn't showing anything unusual, just the living room, as if it was comparing this reality to another one. I stared at the screen for hours. No food, no water, just watching. And the longer I stared, the more I felt like I was being peeled away from myself. Once, I blinked too long from exhaustion. When I opened my eyes, the screen had changed. No longer the living room, but a white, undefined space. In the middle of that space was me, sitting, also staring at a TV. I stood up. The version of me on screen also stood up, but not in sync. A few seconds behind, like it was mimicking or learning. I raised my right hand. On screen, I raised my left. I turned around. The version on the TV kept facing forward, as if it had never looked away. I began to wonder, who am I? The one standing in this room? Or the one in the screen, unmoving, eyes locked? I slapped my face. It felt real, but I no longer trusted my senses. The TV whispered, not in a dream this time, but directly. If you don't want to lose yourself, don't look away. And I obeyed, because each time I looked elsewhere, the world shifted slightly. Not much. Just enough to make me not quite me anymore. I no longer knew what year it was, or even if I was still on Earth. The TV started showing scenes that couldn't possibly exist. Not just my apartment from impossible angles, but completely unfamiliar environments. Once the screen lit up and I saw myself, or someone exactly like me, standing in a dry, cracked forest where the trees were a deep, scorched purple. Above him, 3 moons aligned like ellipses. There was no sound, just crisp, haunting imagery. I had no memory of ever being there, but it felt familiar, like a memory sealed away long ago. Another time, the TV showed a white hallway, endless, with no doors, no windows, no exit. I, on the screen, walked step by step, but never reached the end. The space seemed to stretch with each movement. No escape. The most terrifying part wasn't the landscapes. It was the angles. There were moments the TV showed me, exactly as I was, sitting on the couch in today's clothes, holding the remote, but from an angle that couldn't exist in this apartment. Too high, too deep, or like it was shot from inside me. I turned my head. No cameras, no visible devices, just the TV still playing. I began to feel that my apartment was no longer a fixed space. Every time I walked into the kitchen, the tiles might shift color. Every time I opened the bathroom door, the mirror's reflection felt off. Not wrong, but slightly skewed. The TV kept playing, as if it were communicating with alternate versions of me from other layers of reality. Once I saw myself on the screen, looking directly at me. Not a reflection. Not a camera feed. That person nodded. I wasn't sure if it was a greeting or an acknowledgement that we had switched places. I started hearing sounds, even when the TV was off. Not voices, not music, just a deep, steady hum, like the heartbeat of something enormous. It wasn't coming from the speakers. It came from inside the walls, from the air, from beneath the wooden floorboards. The sound didn't hurt, but it made it impossible to concentrate on anything else. I couldn't read, couldn't write emails. Sometimes I couldn't even remember why I'd walked into a room. I tried leaving the apartment, drove to the coast over an hour away, brought a camcorder, an EMF reader. I wanted to verify, was it just in the apartment or had something followed me out? All day, I didn't hear the hum. I could eat, breathe. I thought I'd escaped. But when I got home and reviewed the footage, I froze. The video showed me sitting motionless in front of the TV. There was no clip of me leaving the house. No driving. No beach. Just me at home, unblinking. I checked the second camera. Same footage. I compared the timestamps. They perfectly matched the time I remembered being away. I called the only person I still talk to, Elena, the neighbor upstairs. Are you okay? I saw you a few times this week, just standing in the lobby like you were waiting for someone. My skin went cold. No, I didn't leave the house. I was at the beach all day yesterday. Elena was quiet for a moment, then said, I saw you the day before that, and Tuesday. I had no memory of going out those days, but somehow another version of me was still moving around. That night, the hum returned at 2:07 a.m. No picture, just black. But I understood what it was implying. You can leave, but part of you will always remain. I could no longer tell the difference between being awake and being watched. Or more accurately, I no longer knew if I was living or being broadcast. That morning, I got up from the couch to make coffee. When I returned, the TV was showing me, still sitting, but the version on screen had a different expression. Slightly smiling, unblinking, head tilted as if listening in on something. I looked into the screen. He looked back at me. I raised my right hand. On the screen, I raised the left. No lag this time. No mirrored delay. It was independent behavior. I didn't dare turn the TV off anymore, because if the screen went dark, I wouldn't know if I was still real. That night, I set up a camera to record myself sleeping. When I reviewed the footage, I saw something strange. I walked out of the bedroom at 2:41 a.m., straight to the TV, and sat down. No sound. Just sat there. And the TV wasn't even on. But I stared at it like I was watching something important. I had no memory of doing that. No dream to recall. I checked what had played on the TV at that time. It showed the living room, with another me standing behind the window. Just a shadow, but the same height, same hair, same posture. I stared at the TV, and this time it didn't stare back. Because now the me inside was looking straight at me. The angle didn't make sense. No camera could have captured it from that direction. His gaze met mine, through the glass, through space, like an eye that had been waiting a long time to see. And I understood. There was another version, another me, who had learned, watched, mimicked every movement, every expression. It only needed one final thing, the moment to replace me. The TV turned on at 3:06 a.m. I didn't touch the remote. No movement triggered it. Just a single, non-looping clip. On the screen was me, hair disheveled, eyes sunken, face pale like I hadn't slept in days. I was seated in the usual spot on the couch, soft light washing over me. No movement, just staring. But this time, not at the TV, at something beyond the screen. I understood it immediately. It wasn't me watching the TV. It was the TV watching me. The camera angle wasn't from inside the room, not from any camera I'd ever installed. This was a view from within the TV, from the other side of the screen. I saw myself as a subject, a character, recorded, arranged, observed. I reached up to touch my face. It felt normal. I pinched my skin. Still flesh. But the feeling of being here was thinning. I tried standing up. My body responded. I tried turning the TV off. My hand didn't move. On screen, I or someone like me tilted their head, staring back at me as if waiting for a reaction. Then he smiled. A crooked, knowing grin. I started shaking, not from fear, but because I was no longer sure which side I was on. I remembered the time the TV showed me, from behind my own head. No one placed a camera there. No device could have captured that view. I thought it was a glitch, but now I knew. It wasn't a camera. It was a gaze from the other side. I was being broadcast, or I had been replaced. I couldn't remember the last time I left the living room. I didn't know if the front door even opened anymore. I wasn't sure I ever really left, or just watched versions of myself leaving. Every image in my memory now feels like clipped footage. No sensation, no weight, only light. I looked into the TV. It was now black, but I felt a stare just beyond the glass, like something waiting for me to blink, so it could step in. I don't know how long I've been watched, and now I'm not sure if I'll ever leave the living room again.